Welcome to the Marketing Trench. So excited to have you all here today. So today we are going to be bringing on a good friend of ours, Will Gray. We're talking about Zapier. It's not Zapier. Don't call it Zapier.
Zapier.
It is Zapier, and it makes you happier.
Oh my God.
That's right. Happier with Zapier.
Happier with Zapier.
Wow, we are not doing this right now.
So here's the deal. 30,000 foot level, okay? We reference this tool regularly here on the Marketing Trench. We're always talking about, oh yeah, you can do these things and then use Zapier to blah, 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 blah. And Ricardo and I were talking this week, and we realized two things. One, that Scott was not going to be here because he's lazy and useless. But two,
Scott's not going to be here?
No.
Guys, I can't do this without Scott. I'm sorry. I'm out.
Honestly, we can barely do this without Scott. So the second thing we realized is that we drop this reference to this tool called Zapier all the time. And if you were to go look in the Marketing Trench archives, you will not find a single episode dedicated to this very, very powerful tool. It's really a linchpin in any tech stack that is going to be connecting various parts, whether it's email, CRM, anything like that, follow-up campaigns. All of it really does rely pretty heavily on Zapier. Yeah. And Will here is very, very good. I would call him an expert at Zapier.
Zapier.
That's the Zapiers. But here's the thing, okay? You'll notice that Will does not have the company for which he works in his description. And all we can say is you should absolutely not Google search Will Gray and title. And the reason that he cannot disclose the company he works for, we're not trying to be shady. It's just his advice is so good that his legal at his company is afraid that it might constitute a kickback. So that's how good today's episode is going to be.
Ridiculous.
We're going to launch into it, and we're excited. Will, thank you so much for coming on, for making the time today. We're really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I should clarify, per my legal department, I'm actually not here to give advice, just to share how I use Zapier and how it's been helpful in my business. And hopefully that'll kind of contextualize how it can work in sales in general, because I do sales.
That's really interesting. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Okay. So lawyers in the back, are we good? Are we good? Okay. No suey. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Let's move forward. So Zapier, what is it?
Yeah.
Let's just start with what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a service that I use a lot because it can make one sort of app, website, web app that you use, talk to another, and coordinate events that happen between different platforms. And it sounds really arcane, really weird until you can actually put it in practice like I did. I actually found Zapier a couple years before I started using it from an ad. I looked at it, it looked cool, but I was going through, I'm like, okay, so I can automatically turn my Gmail emails into an Evernote note. Great. I can also copy and paste. I don't know what to do with that. And I just moved on, right? And then I started using automation in my own business. I was using ConvertKit to automate a lot of my follow-up with customers and to activate like ConvertKit drip campaigns. And I was downloading a spreadsheet every morning of the calls I wanted to make, making notes in that spreadsheet and uploading it back into ConvertKit. Super efficient. I loved it. And then I was talking to actually Ricardo one day, and he said, hey, if you have Twilio, which does virtual text messaging and phone numbers, and Zapier, then you can connect Twilio to your ConvertKit account and send text messages as well as just emails. So that sounds cool. So I went to Zapier. The first thing I saw is your free trial is expired 2 years ago. Darn it. And I signed up for Twilio around the same time. And one thing I can say definitively between the two systems, Zapier is much more user-friendly than Twilio.
1,000%.
Which is not a high bar. But you may have also heard the term like API, right? And if you are fluent in like the software development and stuff that you would need to really leverage and use APIs, if you have a developer on staff, or if you're a developer yourself and you have your own server, you might not need something like Zapier. But if you don't fit that description, it makes it a lot easier than
which is
learning how to build a
everybody.
server, learning how to write JavaScript, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the simple version, like when I was using it in ConvertKit, I would add to my automations, not just the email drips, but then it would add certain tags in ConvertKit, right? And then I can go into Zapier and actually build a flow that says when a tag is added to a contact in ConvertKit, get their phone number from ConvertKit, give it to Twilio, and have Twilio send this text message to that person.
Okay.
And that was my baseline application of Zapier.
So here's the website for those who are GDPR. Let me click that. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you guys the website real quick if you're watching this. And this is how, Will, I love your synopsis of it and what you used it for initially. I mean, that's exactly right. It's connecting, all the various parts of your ecosystem together so that they talk to each other, so that you don't have to do things like download a file here, upload it into that thing to trigger, these actions. It can all be done automatically. And if you're browsing, you can see there's quite a bit that they've got here in terms of workflows and branching logic. They've got trigger events, built-in actions. If we were to look at let's real quick talk about the pricing before we dive in, just so you know what we're looking at here. So they've got different plans. And they break it down by task. Can you just tell people what is a task in Zapier?
Yeah, so a task is basically a step that Zapier is going to take on your behalf. So in my example of when someone is tagged in ConvertKit, send them a text in Twilio. That send them a text counts as a task. So every time you tag someone in ConvertKit with that particular automation, that Zap running, you would use one task, right?
Okay.
If it was, for instance, when someone is tagged, send them a text, and then send me an email notification that you sent a text, that's still one automation, but it's two tasks. Sending the text message, sending me the notification.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So if you're going to do very little with Zapier, 50 tasks a month, right? Then you can pay basically nothing. And then it scales all the way up to company level at 100,000 tasks a month. Will has given me some advice for my company, and not advice. He has told me what he has done that has worked successfully for him.
Thank you.
And if he were in my shoes, what that might look like. So, I think for a company like mine, something like 2,000 tasks a month is probably fine. In other words, if, we're uploading and we have maybe 20 things that happen in a given business day, 30 things that happen in a given business day, right? We're not going to quickly exhaust this 2,000 tasks a month. So, for $50 a month or less, you can have quite a bit of work taken off of your plate and just done automatically. So that's the pricing. And then they've got some other things here, the custom logic paths and stuff. You have to kind of pay up for that.
I should point out some of these are premium apps. So
yes.
meaning Scott always describes Zapier as your connectivity tool. It's as
what is it called?
Zapier. As your connectivity tool. Like you're using a dozen different products in your real estate business, and this is the duct tape that holds it all together, right? The primary one that we've always used is like Facebook lead ads, because we've run ads for realtors. So lead ads is considered a premium app. That's going to require a paid account, not the free one.
Okay. That's good to know.
So certain apps, if you just search, like if you search one tool and then you search another tool, basically what tools do you want to connect together?
Yeah.
It'll have a label on it that says premium app or not.
Yeah. There's also some flow control within Zapier that needs a quote unquote premium account, like paths. Yeah. So I have an automation, for instance, where it's going to look someone up in my CRM, and if they're already a client, it's going to send this message. If they're not a client, it's going to send this message, right? That sort of if or if then requires the paid up account.
Yeah. And that makes sense, right? It's like the more you want it to do and the more it has to work, then the more it's going to cost you. And an easy way to know if you're going to be hanging out in premium land is if you go to the website and you drop down the explore button there, and you can see apps that work with Zapier. You click on that.
Zapier, please.
Zapier. You can sort apps by most popular, but premium is a category. So you can see immediately, hey, what are the premium apps here? And as you can see, Facebook lead ads, one of them, Salesforce, QuickBooks. But something that isn't a premium app, Google, Gmail, right? Or Slack or MailChimp. So there's a world in which you're able to, get away with not having to pay. But the more sophisticated, then yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
what I really did is I never took a Zapier course or anything. It was all very incremental. So I started on the basic, did what I could with it. And then only when, oh man, I wish I could do this, this would make things easier. This would make things faster. I need to
so let's
learn this skill, upgrade to this tier, right?
So let's talk about that for a second. Like, what in your mind was, oh, I can make this easier, or I can make this faster, or I can save time by doing this? Like, what were those specific activities?
Yeah, so a lot of things, really, it was anytime I found myself doing the same repetitive task on the computer over and over again, right? That didn't require a lot of creativity, a lot of independent thinking. And when I was honest with myself, it was the work that I was doing to avoid my work, right? And there were a lot of, once I started learning how to automate things, there were a lot of benefits. For one thing, the work actually happened because it happened consistently. It's easier to build an automation than it is to grow in discipline, right? Do both, but it's easier to automate something than to develop discipline to do it over and over again. And because it happens very quickly, more than reading on one thing and typing into another, et cetera, or copying, pasting, and changing the name over and over again, I could do things much more at scale using automation, using Zapier. Like if I'm making a lot of cold calls, right, to my prospects, which may or may not be real estate agents, I like to schedule my next call, send a follow-up email, but I'd push that to the end of the day because I need to be calling during these hours. And then either I make a bunch of calls and I'm really tired and it's just too much work to follow up, or I don't make a bunch of calls and I'm depressed because I didn't make many calls, so I don't follow up. When I automate the follow-up, it happens right away, and it really just mentally, I think, removed a block for me to make more calls and be more active, knowing that I could manage the follow-up aspects. And Zapier was a big part of that. CRMs obviously were another big factor, as sort of a springboard for some automations and a landing for others.
Okay, so let's actually let's dive in. Let's see how this thing actually works. Are you able to take us into your Zapier account and
let's see.
Poke around?
Screen sharing is easiest with 2 monitors. Lucky thing I have 2 monitors. All right. Can you see my screen now? Am I sharing? There we go.
Hey, look, Zapier.
This is trippy. It's Zapier. Excuse me.
Oh my God, Ricardo's gone.
He got zapped.
He got zapped. He got zapped.
Sorry, zaped. That sounds wrong. Never mind. Anyway, so I'm going to actually build something, I think, that that I've kind of wanted to do in my business for a while. And that can be sort of a use case for Zapier, right? So keeping track of what I actually need to do in my business, like, hey, someone requested, a flyer box, right, for their open house. I get the email. I want to remember to do it. I don't want to necessarily rely on my memory. So what I might do is open up my to-do list app, Todoist, and type bring a flyer box to Ricardo for his open house by Thursday, right? But I should be able to actually automate that, make it a little bit easier, and trigger that based on tagging an email in Gmail. I've never really attempted to do this, so hopefully it'll go well. And this is how I learned. Also, like, just a lot of trial and error, because hey, here's an example automation. A lot of times for me, that doesn't really click because I don't see the application in my own business, right? Like the Facebook lead ads getting added to your CRM. I don't run Facebook lead ads. I tune out, right? But I do sometimes forget to do things. So this has some applications for me, right? So the first thing we're going to do is choose the app that we're going to use as the trigger. I already selected Gmail. If I was using a different, I don't know if Yahoo Mail is in here. No. But I type it in here. Just grab the app. If you haven't used it before, then you would need to connect your account, which is different in a few different apps. It'll either open up a little window for you to log in with your login credentials, which if I remember right, Gmail does, or your web service will give you an API key that you need to go to the settings on that service, find, and enter into Zapier. But it always has really good instructions for how to find that key. And then it's just copying and pasting and it's good to go, right? So we choose the app, then we choose the event. As you can see, there's in this one a good number of things to choose from. I'm going to choose new labeled email, but all these are the triggers. This is what do I pick up that tells me it's time to spring into action and do the rest of the steps in the flow.
Okay.
And it's helpful not to go off on a tangent, but it's always helpful whenever you're using an app for one thing to look through the drop-down box, and it gives you some, in a lot of cases, inspiration for other ways you might be able to use Zapier to make your business more efficient. So here we go. I set up the account. Mine was already connected. And then we're going to choose a label. I'm actually going to need to go into Gmail and make a new label. So go to gmail.com and make a to-do label.
Label is a specific thing. Like, it means a specific thing. It is a specific feature within Gmail.
Right. Yeah, that's not a Zapier thing. That's just a Gmail thing.
But you know to do this because Zapier is looking for it.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because, me, for example, I wouldn't necessarily know that a label is a thing. But once I'm in Zapier and I'm looking for what I see what it's looking for, then that tells me, hey, maybe I need to go into Gmail and figure out what that thing is, right? So if it's looking for a label, then I maybe do a quick Google search, what is a label in Gmail? And then I see how to create it, what its use case is, that sort of thing. And that's all part of the sort of autodidactic self-teaching process, right? That you can go through. Or you can just watch. One of the things I do regularly is I watch YouTube videos on cat videos. No, I watch videos on how to do this stuff, right? And I follow people. I just hit pause and follow them step by step.
Yeah.
Okay. At 2x speed.
In the trial and error category, I made a to-do label. I'm not seeing it in here. Ordinarily, I'd spend like 2 hours going down the rabbit hole of how do I get this to appear. But for now, I'm actually just going to use starred. So instead of setting a custom label, I'll just star the email. What's up?
What if you refresh your fields?
Well, I tried refreshing my fields. I'll try it again.
I bet you did. And I was like,
but it's still not really appearing. I could try the custom and just typing in. Oh, no, there are no custom choices available.
Supposed to
You
hit
can
load.
type a value.
Supposed to hit load more. Click on
I'm
that.
supposed to hit load more? Oh, look at that.
You're welcome.
This is
Yeah,
what
but it didn't
Ricardo's-
load anymore.
This is also what Ricardo's here for.
We'll use starred. We'll continue. We'll continue with starred.
Good.
And then what you got to do, I don't know why it skipped this, but we need to test the trigger. So I'm going to go back into my inbox.
See, David knows. David feels my pain.
And
When you watch a
I'm
tutorial,
going
it
to
says, in this video, we're going to get into how to test your automations.
Oh my goodness. I hate when you're watching a YouTube video on a specific thing, like how to change the battery in your laptop.
And it's like 12 minutes, a
The
12-minute intro.
The first 12 minutes is there are some reasons why you might buy a laptop. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just show me how to change the battery anyway.
This is why I didn't buy that laptop. And then
See, David knows.
yeah, see, David feels my pain. This is why 2x speed exists. If you could go faster, I would, but
all right. So
I do 2x speed, go grab coffee, come back, and it's still on the intro.
you know they have 2x speed on Netflix now?
What?
Why
For
would
when you love watching the movie, but you wish it was over sooner. Couldn't find a labeled email.
This
I
is
swear I
going well.
started an email.
Well, this is going well.
I think we're quickly leaving kickback territory. This is like the anti-kickback.
Oh, here's the problem. I'm using the wrong Gmail account.
Oh, wow.
Did we say?
All right, I'm
expert?
going to start this one
Expert was
over.
a strong word.
Speaking of 2x speed, people are going to watch this replay on 2x speed.
All right. So let's start from scratch.
Hold
Let
on,
me
I
pay
gotta-
more attention.
I
My
gotta put
usual
a-
email is Will for title.
quick programming note here for Mike Me. Go ahead and just delete the last 5 minutes. Just thank you. That's our producer. Producer Nick, please delete the last 5 minutes. All right, starting over. Hey, Will, congratulations on getting here so fast.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So now let's see. Oh, here we go. There's the label that I couldn't find earlier. To do.
Toto. Oh, to do. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll proceed as planned.
Yep.
Couldn't find a labeled email to do because I started instead. So now I'm going to add a label. Label this one
Yeah, go ahead.
from Redfin as to do. Test, and then here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So you always have to create a test event in Zapier in order to proceed, which sometimes it can be an inconvenience. Sometimes you want to set up automations for events that might not happen until you start using the automation. But you have to give it some test data, not just for testing, but also so that it can give you the examples and use data to work through as you build it. So it knows sort of what kind of data is incoming in order to build the rest of the flow out, right?
Don't try to skimp out. Always test your stuff.
Yeah. One thing I've liked to do that's been helpful, and I'll show more on this step too, but this is what the Zapier flow looks like. These boxes get broken down into these little rectangles. Everything we just put in gets reduced to this new labeled email in Gmail until you click on it, re-expand it, and you can work through it. So I always like to, unless like here it's somewhat obvious, I like to rename my steps, especially if I'm building a long automation. I like to give it the most descriptive name possible, because it doesn't really give me away otherwise to put in notes to say what I'm trying to do. So especially if there's a lot of steps, if it's kind of complex, it makes it a lot easier to go in and troubleshoot when things don't work, which happens all the time.
Yeah.
Every time. It never works the first time. That's the rule of Zapier.
Actually, that's
If
what
it
we were
look-
proving earlier. This was all
Yeah.
part of the plan.
Yeah, exactly. I'm playing 4D chess here.
Yes.
If it looks like it worked the first time, it didn't. You just haven't found the error yet. So I've built my trigger. Step 2 is an action. And I have 2 types of actions to choose from, really. One of them is an actual action, but the other type of action is a lookup action, where it's just going to go to another server or another service, run a search, and pull in some data that it can use for the rest of the automation. So if I wanted to get fancy, I could add a step in between here to look up the from email address in my CRM and see if they exist in the CRM. And if so, add in their name, their email address, their phone number to my Todoist, right? And I might jump in and do that time permitting, but that can get kind of complex. We might need to use paths to do something, if it exists, and something else if it doesn't. And it would be much easier to break and actually take a long time to do. So we're going to keep it simple.
Wait, I gotta pause you. I gotta pause you. Will.
Sorry.
Ricardo, how well does David know you? I'm gonna put it up. David, let's be clear. Ricardo started drinking 2 hours ago. Okay. I'm sorry.
5 o'clock somewhere.
I like David.
So with this, we're just going to use the first one. This is the one I use most of the time with Todoist. Just create task, right?
Okay.
And continue, choose an account. Again, I've already signed up in Todoist, so I don't need to enter my API key or anything. The default is your inbox project. Todoist lets you set up different quote-unquote projects. That's a little bit beyond my use case. So instead, we'll just put in a title, follow up on email request. And then you see this little drop-down list here. And it gives you all the data that Gmail is giving you to work with in Zapier. And something I've noticed for any Google product, there is a lot. We're on television, so I'll just say a lot, right? There's a ton of data. Fortunately, in this case, most of the relevant data is on top. That's not always the case with Google's integrations, but here, we're just going to click subject there, and it's going to integrate that subject line into the actual text that we're putting in here, right? So it's like a merge field. And then the note itself, I'll just put body plain, which should be the content of the email without any HTML or anything, right? I don't need a section. I don't need to assign it to one user or another because I'm the only user. Due date. I always forget how to do this, but I think it's this. Zap, meta, human, now with underscores. It's like an automatic Zapier variable, which you can always Google, but basically it's going to set it to do right now. So that, like in Todoist, things get lost if they don't have a to-do date attached. Other to-do apps might work different ways, but I have had automations where I set it up with Todoist and I didn't put in a to-do date. I tested it and I thought, great, it works the first time. And then I was going through and not seeing my tasks because it didn't work the first time. It wasn't actually showing up as due, so it didn't get done. Priority natural, we could set it to different priority levels. That's more a Todoist feature than a Zapier feature. I don't want to get too much off topic. What's most relevant to Zapier is the different apps will all have a different set of options for the action that you want to take, and different levels of data and stuff that you can import, which can let you get either very general in your automations, which this one's pretty general, or extremely granular. We'll hit continue. We're going to test the action. Test and continue. And it says the test was successful. A task was sent to Todoist just now. And right here in my Todoist, due today, follow up on email requests coming soon in Fountain Valley, yada, yada, yada. So I can see right away there's one little cosmetic change that I want to make, not because I'm OCD, but maybe. I want to put a space in between my colon and my merge field.
No. That's awesome.
And then just continue. You don't always have to retest. I like to retest. But you can click this. Well, it's not there anymore, but there's a skip test button in the top right corner. Usually the more testing, the better, especially if you're me and you sometimes miss some details. Gmail can't connect to Todoist. That's crazy. It just worked a second ago.
Turn it on anyway.
I tried.
So, okay, presumably this works. What I'd like to do is get into some recipes for folks. Go ahead, Will.
Oh, no, I'm listening.
No, so like David pointed out, you can zap info into HomeBot and whatnot. What are some other, you're obviously using it to kind of, in this case, set reminders for yourself. So I do a lot of webinars. I have a bunch of zaps right now for my webinars. So on my webinars, I'm identifying who's a current customer, who was a former customer, and then who's a new prospect.
Yeah.
So I'm using the paths feature in Zapier to say find contact or look contact up in Follow Up Boss, and then are they a current client or not, right? If they're not in Follow Up Boss, then create a new contact. If they are in Follow Up Boss, do all these other sort of extra things.
Yeah.
For realtors, there's a lot of different use cases. I mean, we have so many programs that talk to one another. What sort of recipes can we or should we start playing around with first? Or is it literally like we talked about? Did we talk about Dustin creating SOPs for our business and then like making a checklist of all the things that are repetitive, and then these are the things you should delegate and outsource? It's kind of the same thing here, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's been a while since we brought that up on the show.
But the way I look at automations is like, if I'm doing something repetitive over and over and over and over again, can I automate this process? And if so, like, those are the things you should absolutely 100% be automating.
Yeah. And the more I've found, the more I use it, the more I get to know how the different features work, the more useful it becomes. Things that either A, wouldn't have occurred to me to do, much less automate. I'm seeing a way to get them done through Zapier. And also things that I didn't think would necessarily be possible to automate. It can be done with Zapier, and it can work really well with some of the automation features in other services. So webhook, this trigger event right here, it's a little advanced, but it's something that's been super useful as I've become more advanced in my usage of Zapier. And that just basically, as a trigger, gives you a URL that you can put into some different apps where they'll actually send information to that URL. So it can be helpful for systems that have an API, but they don't have a Zapier integration. That's a long thing. I won't go into the details of how that works. But just know that it exists. When you see webhooks, or sometimes they'll be described as HTTP requests or post or get in all caps, those can all be done through the webhooks. And it's also a useful way to get Zapier to trigger itself, which sometimes you need for some different off-the-wall applications.
Here's a recipe that David suggested, which I think is actually kind of fun. Automatic B-Day card program connected to your CRM and handwrittenly. Isn't handwrittenly, isn't that the program that Scott used to send us our Christmas cards, and then he let it slip that it was a bot that was sending it or something, and
That's
Josh
awesome.
got all in his grill about it. But I mean, it actually, if you haven't seen him, so our sometimes co-host, when he decides to show up, Scott, he I just dunk on you and Scott when you're not here. He actually sent these really amazing Christmas cards along with live wreaths last year to some of his top clients. And I'm
not a top client because I didn't get one.
You didn't get one, but I actually refied through him. So he sent me one, and I got this card, and I thought he hand wrote it. Now, obviously, the handwriting was pretty clean, but I thought that he had written it. It looked that good, and then I found out later that it was a program like Handwrittenly. And to David's point, when we just introduced that comment, right? It's like, birthday cards are the sort of thing that we think, yeah, that would be amazing. Like, I should send birthday cards. And then we never do, right? Like, it's just not a priority. We make an excuse the day that we're supposed to send a birthday card. And, but cards, handwritten cards, or things that look like handwritten cards make a huge impact. I know that when I send them out, people really appreciate it. Like, I get texts back or emails back thanking me. We all have a mutual friend in Title who's been very, very consistent about sending handwritten cards for a couple of years now. And that's been a big, big thing for him. Right. So it's like, that's the sort of thing that you can automate, and it's going to make a huge impression, and it doesn't take a lot of work from you once you set up the initial automations, and it can be done through Zapier.
I can't underscore. So David says it costs about $4.05 per card. That is so incredibly worth it. And like, not just birthdays, but like anniversaries, not actual like wedding anniversary, but like home ownership anniversary. Can you believe it's been 1 year since we closed on your home? Woohoo. Like that sort of thing.
Yeah. So some other workflows. Let's assume, for example, maybe you have a contact in your Gmail, right? And you want to put that contact into your CRM, and you want to be able to like have it filter out. So this contact is a home seller, or in my case, this contact is a real estate agent. This contact is a title person. This contact is a let's just say an affiliate in the industry, whatever, right? Like, you can do that kind of stuff with Zapier, right?
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on what you want to do with that information.
Yeah. So how do you know? Like, is there a way to know how that's possible? So, for example, if I was using a CRM like, I don't know, Surefire, let's take a look. I would love to kind of work through this as an example. Is Surefire one of the available Zaps?
Let's see. I don't have a Surefire account, so I wouldn't be able to like create any test Zaps with it. But the way I always like to check, they give you an apps interface, but it's not actually super user friendly. I actually like to just go into the Zaps interface and just type in the app. So Surefire, yes, it exists, but it doesn't have a trigger event that's available.
So what is that?
It's unusual for a CRM. It basically means that Zapier can respond to things in other apps and do something in Surefire based on that, but it can't catch something that's happening in Surefire.
So what if we wanted to start at Gmail and have Gmail be the trigger and then go into Surefire? We could do that?
Yeah. Different systems have different levels of selection
Mhm.
for what actions are available.
So let's
So
assume that
some of
like
them are
I got a contact. Let's see. And I wanted that, like, I got an email from, let's assume I got an email from Ricardo at Follow Up Boss. And I wanted that email to be zapped from my Gmail. And in my Gmail, I have Ricardo tagged as an affiliate.
Yeah.
And because Spam Master is not a category. And so I have him tagged as an affiliate, and I want it to feed into my Surefire CRM
Yeah.
as an affiliate. Is that possible?
It looks like the only action that Surefire has directly available in Zapier is create a contact.
Interesting.
So that would really only be useful if you wanted to create Ricardo.
Okay, and if I wanted to create Ricardo as an affiliate, is that possible?
That we'd actually have to like
have to
log
do it
into
now.
the app to get in and see what kinds of options it gives you when creating a contact. A lot of times it'll give you the ability when you're creating a contact to set custom fields or add tags, however you're keeping track of that data. So most of the time the answer would be yes in my experience with the different systems and CRMs I've worked with.
Yeah. So it just I think part of it is if you're not sure, this is actually this is a great use case, because it looks like this particular CRM this particular CRM has trouble integrating, playing nice with the things. So if you don't know if your CRM is going to play nice, you can sign up for the free account and just kind of poke around as much as possible. I mean, if you're trying to do like a premium thing, then that's going to be a little more challenging. And in that case, you may even want to look into, oh, interesting. You may want to look into a Google video about how to do something like this too, because, odds are somebody has recorded a Google video about how to do what you're trying to do. And you can see if it's possible.
Yeah. I have a couple of apps that I work with where, like Surefire, they either don't just have very many options at all, or they don't have the options for what I want to do, but they have an API. And that's when I use the webhook feature a lot, because that's what allows Zapier to integrate with those APIs. It's a lot to learn. Once you learn it, though, like if it saves you 10 minutes a day and you spend 2 to 4 hours automating it, that would pay off in how many work days? Like,
oh, right.
A couple months at most, right?
Yeah. Especially, if it's something you do frequently, it'll pay out real quick.
Yeah. Or plus, something you should do frequently, but don't.
Yeah. Like birthday cards. Ricardo, do you have some other recipes in mind? You were talking about recipes, and, Will's ability to suggest some of these things might be a bit limited, but you can drop some and we can maybe poke around and see what that looks like.
Well, so my use case is a little different for what I'm using it for work. But if I think about realtors, there's usually, we always talk about, like with online leads, and we always say a lead is going to be ready to convert when they're ready, not when we want them to be ready.
Yeah.
So traditionally a lead comes in, we put them on a drip campaign, that drip campaign runs for whatever period of time, and then that's it. The action's over. But how then can we start to implement other things and layer on that automation so that when this automation ends, another one picks up or continues? So that if you do have a system like HomeBot and somebody raises their hand or asks a question in HomeBot, or there's other products, a product I saw recently called Revaluate. So Revaluate lets you upload your database, and it runs an algorithm that says, out of the 100 people in your database, Ricardo, these 9 contacts have a sell score of 80% or higher. Basically, these are the ones that have a high propensity to sell based on all of these like criteria. Those are hand raisers. Now, there's nothing that Revaluate does to basically engage them at that point in time. But if I've identified that these 9 contacts have a sell score of 80% or higher, then I can trigger an automation to run and say, hey, send them this text message or send them this email. And the email could be something like, hey, Ricardo, normally I only do, I'm spending some time this weekend creating custom CMA reports or competitive market analysis reports for some of my favorite clients, people just like you, homeowners just like you. Normally, I only create these for people that are thinking of selling their home, but given today's market, I thought it might be valuable for you to have it, even if you're not. Would you like me to create a custom CMA for your home as well? Now, I just said all of that. The cool thing about automation, tools like Zapier and all of these things is doing that one report sounds like a lot of work and sounds like a lot of me combing through my database. But if I spend like an hour or two setting up those automations now,
right,
they can run automatically in perpetuity today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day.
Yeah.
So
it's on while you're off.
It's on while I'm off. Like the goal of all of these automations is to basically set them up so that your marketing is happening 24/7, but also to take the guesswork out of when you come into the office, sit down and plop in front of your computer. It's not, okay, there's a lot of data in front of me. What do I do with it? It's no, these automations are already running. Here are your hand raisers. Those are the ones you should call.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Something that I want to just sort of add on to that and to some of the cases that you were talking about, Ricardo. Like when I have a drip campaign that runs out, right? There's always this temptation to, I want to build like the perfect automation and have everything be automated. But in the meantime, like I would never hesitate to start with what I know, or start with something extremely basic, right? So this is actually a pretty good idea. I might take my drip campaigns that run on follow-ups for like meetings or something and say, okay, so I have a meeting with Ricardo. It goes okay, not great. I'm going to send him this follow-up campaign and it runs maybe for 2 weeks, right? If I don't get any responses over those 2 weeks, I don't want to lose touch necessarily with Ricardo. So I'm going to set something up in Zapier that will catch the 2 weeks are up and there haven't been any responses. I don't know right now, setting up that automation, what I'm going to want to do or what I'm going to want to evaluate. So I'll just have it send me an email. Hey, this drip campaign has run out. We haven't received a response from Ricardo. Here's a heads up. Here's a link to Ricardo's page in your CRM. So it's not as fully automated as we necessarily like things to be, but it's enough that I'm not forgetting to follow up.
Sometimes that nudge is all you need, though.
Yeah. And then I receive those notifications and I just pay attention to what I do with them. Mm-hmm. And then if I look at what I've been doing with those notifications, okay, is there anything in there that can be automated, that can extend my automation where it's more autonomous and less reliant on me not being lazy?
Yeah, and I think that this is a really important thing to point out. This value of sending yourself notifications. Here internally at Lighthouse, we've structured our CRM not to do the follow-up and not to be the closer, but to be the nudger to our sales team. You know, because I recognize that my sales guys are at their strength, they're at their best when they're picking up the phone, when they're sending a text message, because, you know, they're the ones who are the humans to other people. I mean, they're the ones that have the relationships, right? And so we use a CRM to say, hey, you know, such and such a person opened up escrow today. Call them and say thanks, right? And they wouldn't otherwise know that, but for the automation that we have running in the background. And, you know, of course, at that point, my guys know what to do. And if they have, you know, 7 or 8 of those every single morning they wake up to, these are the people that close, say thank you. These are the people that open and say thank you. These are the people that we haven't heard from in a few weeks, check in, say hi. Like that's all they need. And they can just burn through their email and one at a time, check the box, right? And to their clients, that's going to feel amazing because to their clients, they're like, oh, Dustin knew exactly when to call me, right?
Yeah.
And no one has to be the wiser that a lot of this stuff is just happening automatically in the background.
So speaking of also contacting yourself, sending yourself reminders, one of my favorite automations that I've set up Some of it takes place on Zapier. A lot of the muscle actually lives on Twilio. But I set up an automatic accountability system for myself, which I think is really cool. And it's like super flexible. Like I can use it to keep myself accountable to how many prospecting phone calls I make in a given day. But, I could also use it to build habits, try to break habits like, hey, did you work out today? Yes or no? And actually track and use that data. So there's a schedule trigger in Zapier where it's not waiting for something to happen in Gmail or in my CRM or for a text message to come into Twilio. It's just saying, 5 o'clock on a work day. So rather than using, in this case, Twilio's built-in events are a little limited. So I use that webhook to send a request to the Twilio API. Twilio takes it from there, and it does an event that it calls send a text message and wait for a response. So it'll send me a message and wait for up to 2 hours to see what I send back, right? And then it'll say, hey, Will, it's your automation. How many calls did you make today? I type in a number, and it texts that number to my accountability partner. Or it'll say, hey, it's 7. I asked Will at 5 how many calls he made, and he didn't answer. He owes you $50 or whatever, right? And because of the flexibility of automations, it doesn't have to be to an accountability partner. It could actually build an ongoing Google spreadsheet of how many calls I made, or if I worked out on these days, or when I didn't respond to my accountability automation.
That's awesome.
It is.
It's
awesome.
fun.
David had a few really cool recipes that I'm going to put up on the screen here.
Yeah.
So he is. Oh, yeah, that's the whole thing. So he's sending his. I don't know what BNT is. Do you guys know what BNT is?
I think it's BN Touch CRM, which both exports to Zapier through app and webhooks.
Okay. So he's sending it to HomeBot, which is a program we've talked a lot about here on the program. Closing Card, which I imagine is a kind of handwritten card, send it out. Google Sheets, that's pretty powerful. And by the way, I want to point out, so one of the things we had to do internally was use Google Sheets as actually a trigger. So we have an escrow processing software. It doesn't integrate with anything. It barely integrates with itself. So we have to export a CSV and upload it into Google. But from there, that's able to tip the dominoes of automation, right? And so just as a heads up, like if you have a tool in your stack, especially a fundamental tool, like in our case, our escrow processing software, which just doesn't play nice with anything, that doesn't mean that you can't use automations. Like just figure out where in the tech stack you can start an automation process and figure out how to get to that, right? And Google is a really phenomenal place most of the time to start. Send it into Google Drive, send it into Google Sheets, send it into Google Docs, send it to your Gmail, something like that. And then he also sends his Google Contacts to Contacts Plus, which he says he can use to send text messages, slide dial, all that kind of stuff. So thank you, David, for sharing. That's really generous, and those are some really cool ideas. Will, as we are wrapping up, I would love to know from you any final advice for somebody who's listening to this podcast, like, okay, I'm interested in Zapier and I want to take the plunge. Where did you start and what kept you motivated?
Yeah. So, I started really with Ricardo saying, hey, check this out. You can use these tools to do this. So I went and signed up. I said, all right, Ricardo, let's go out for drinks and you can show me how to do it. And he went out for drinks, but he didn't know how to do it, just that it could be done. I don't know. Log in and find out.
I'm a good for inspiration. I'm a good sounding board.
My muse.
He's my unmuse, but anyway. Okay, so you talked to Ricardo.
And what kept me sort of motivated was just really seeing from experience that this could do the repetitive menial tasks that were actually super important, but I wasn't getting done because they were more repetitive and menial than my attention span would allow for at scale. So A, more things were getting done, and B, I was saving time, right? And able to do, 50 calls instead of 10, right? And then also, as I keep using it, it's fun not to have to work as much to do the same amount of things, right?
Yeah.
You can either take it easier a little bit or do more and start to find ways where, hey, this or that might actually make my life a little easier. Like, I'm going to hop on screen share just one more time. I have never once found a CRM that I thought had a really super, what is going on there? User-friendly interface, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is my CRM Active Campaign. If you want to change a custom field or add a tag or anything, you got to scroll through here, click on whatever, type it in, click save. It's a pain. And then, if I wanted to set an appointment with my client here, Ricardo, I'd have to leave my CRM, go into Google Calendar, add the appointment, right? So I actually set it up for a few shortcuts for myself, like so I'm just typing X, basically is telling the notes this is going to trigger an automation, right? So if I were to click add right now, it would send Ricardo a text message from my Twilio number, hey, Ricardo, what's up? And then it would set in my Google Calendar tomorrow at 3, call Ricardo at, oh, sorry, did I get your number up there? At his phone number. Oops. But I could also, like, in the case of just
Ricardo, on the 15 million people in Los Angeles that just saw that.
Horrible.
That's amazing.
For a good time.
Oh my God. Well, okay. Listen, with that, we'll really, really appreciate your time today. I would tell people where to find you, but we can't do that. So all we can tell you is go Google search Will. He's a great guy, and he's very helpful at the thing that he does, which is super secret. So go look that up on Google. And Will, we really appreciate you. If you want to find more about Ricardo Bueno,
awesome,
you can go to ricardobueno.com. He's got his own podcast on the side. He's always offering really helpful tips, advice, strategies, recipes. So if you're into that sort of thing, Ricardo's website, ricardobueno.com, is where you can find out more about that. And if you want to find out more about escrow, because I don't know, you're bored, you lost your pulse, I don't know what your reason is. But if you want to find out more about escrow, or if you're a buyer or seller, and you're wanting to know what your closing costs might look like if you go into escrow here in the state of California, you can go to lighthouseescrow.com, scroll down in the middle. You can see a free closing cost calculator right there that you can use to get some estimates very quickly. Yeah, that's just helpful information. If you want to connect with me or my team, our information is there, and we'd love to answer any questions you have, even if you don't have an escrow with us. Even if you're thinking, hey, I might go into escrow and I've got some questions about, say, how we're holding our property and what it might look like I'm in a probate, and what are the steps of an escrow and a probate. Happy to help you, love to help you. Reach out to us, give us a call, or shoot us an email. We are here for you. All right, guys, this has been great. Until next time, this has been the Marketing Trench.
Yeah.